Another week, another edition of Coach's Corner, and we have a special guest for this week's edition. We are pleased to be joined this week by the new Executive Director of the WVSSAC, Mr. Wayne Ryan. Wayne, welcome to the program.
Well, I'm glad to be here, and I appreciate you calling me special because it might not last long, so thank you very much.
Well, I mean, obviously, I talked with Ren Baker a couple of weeks ago, and one of the questions I'd asked him was all the headaches he's had to deal in the last 3 weeks. You've been with the SSAC for a number of years now. You just assumed the role as the Executive Director of the SSAC. Let's just kind of start there. What have these last couple of weeks, maybe even the last month even been for you, just in regards of getting your feet wet with being a new Executive Director?
Well, it's been a whirlwind, really has, because we've had the fortunate position to be able to hire 3 new staff members and add a director of compliance, and so in adding three new people to the staff, and in the rearrangements of assignments and jobs, and even the physical relocation within the building and everything, we really were not all together until July 7th, and next Wednesday, July 23rd, we're on the road already for a football clinic. So the timeline was tight, but it's a great group of people. They've worked very hard. They've worked well together, and I'm excited about where we're going to go as an organization.
Isn't it crazy just how time flies with especially high school sports? You end the first week of June, and then you blink, you walk a couple of steps, next thing you know, first week of high school football season for practicing in August.
Absolutely, and that's what it's also exciting about it, because there's always an activity going on. You're always looking forward to an activity, and you're always still wrapping up an activity. We're almost always in 3 seasons at the same time. But again, if you love sports, you have a passion for education-based athletics, it's a place to be.
Let's talk about the staff that you assembled. Obviously, one of the members that stayed back was Dan Comer alongside you. But just talk about these people that you added onto the staff. And you mentioned the new director of compliance as well. What were you wanting to look for whenever you were assembling your staff?
Well, let me first give a shout out to Dan Comer. Of course, Dan is an assistant director who's been with us for 2 years now. And in January, Dan had open heart surgery. Okay? But just recently, we were at the national conference on July 1 in Chicago, and Dan won the 5K men's division walk.
Wow.
And that has been his goal the entire time. As part of his rehab and recovery from his surgery, he has literally trained. And to win that race, there's a lot of people participate. It's kind of we're calling him the national champion. So, I just want to give a shout out to Dan, number one, for his approach to his health and the way he's worked to recover from his heart surgery, and as inspiration to anyone else that's going through that. So we appreciate Dan, and of course Dan will oversee the expansion of the soccer tournament this year. We're excited about that. And then our new staff, we've added Dr. Jacqueline Swain, who is the principal at St. Albans, comes with a lot of experiences, has been a coach, has been a principal, and is a parent of athletes, and so she understands the various roles and how it goes, and has a lot of good background, brings a lot of skill set in communications and a lot of other organizational strengths to the office, and greatly appreciate her. She's already working hard with some changes in cheer and volleyball that are coming up, so we appreciate that. And then we have Chris Wells, who was the principal at Ritchie County High School, and again, has the wealth of experience. Been a coach, been an AD, been a principal, parent of athletes. So, depending on what hat you wear on a given game day or a given day of your life, your perspective is totally different. And so I like to have that type of experience in the office with our staff that understands it from all the different perspectives. And Chris brings that, and he's an even keel, great common sense guy. I really appreciate him. He's going to be taking over football, which we're getting on the road right away. And then we've added the position director of compliance, and that's Jason Bankston, who was the athletic director at Cabell Midland, did a great job as athletic director. And Jason is a high energy guy, loves to work, and he's going to do a great job in that position. I'm excited about having that position because we were a little overwhelmed at times in the office about, you've got to put out daily fires, you've got to handle the daily business, you've got to prepare for your tournaments, but sometimes compliance was hard to keep up with, so I'm really excited to add that position. So, and the thing is, all 3 of those hires are people with technology skills, and they're younger people, and I think it's really a good change for the office that we're able to advance many things that may be small in areas, but it kind of gets us away from this always been this way. We're making some changes.
Two of the people that retired that allowed these people to go into the offices in Parkersburg were David Price, executive director for the last 2 years, and then Cindy Daniel, who served in the SSAC for a number of years. Kind of talk about the two of them, their influence with the SSAC, and how you kind of saw the organization itself grow with the two of them in the leadership roles they were.
Well, I mean, David Price took over the positions on some tough times, best way to put it, and provided great leadership and wisdom and experience, and really appreciate learning from him in his leadership style and listening to him in the way he handled many tough situations. I hope I'm able to use those experiences and use them wisely moving forward. And Cindy, Dr. Daniel was tremendous, and I think the ultimate compliment if you're director of sports is that over your tenure you made improvements, and I think every sport, every one of her responsible areas, we saw vast improvements, and I don't think a director of a sport could do anything better than leave it better than you found it, and I think she definitely did that.
When you guys start identifying the upcoming athletic season, again, we're just a couple of days away from the beginning of the high school football season, but just when you guys are looking at the challenges that await you all leading into the 25-26 athletic season, what are some of those things, and how are you guys trying to tackle those early on?
Well, a couple things. First of all, our classification process is now only good for 2 years. So we're going to be constantly evaluating hard over the next 2 years to see if we've got it right. We're confident the Board of Control, which is our principals and our governing body that makes the rules that we enforce as an office, very few people understand that. They have come up with new classification system. We have extended that into some sports that aren't 4 classes. We've listened to a lot of input from our coaches committee and various people and principals around the state. And we're excited about these changes, and we're excited to spend the next 2 years evaluating those changes, as some sports have added classes, some sports have remained the same, but are going to be separated a little bit differently. We're excited about that, but we're also, we've got to work very hard because of the expansion of many of the state tournaments. Extra days means extra work and extra people involved.
When you talk about the classification system that was introduced a couple of months back, were you confident in that was the right decision made whenever it was ultimately decided, and this is what's going to happen, the 2-year process, and then the cut lines for Quad A all the way down to Single A?
Well, I think given the scenario of where we'd been over the last few months, I think what we've come up with was very serviceable, and I think the body agreed to that. So again, I think everything, you're always looking at ways to improve things and see what you can do. But I think for right now, we're on pretty good ground, and I look forward to running the events this year, seeing how they go, and continuing to evaluate on a constant basis.
Last year was definitely one of those years you'll look back 5, 10, 15 years from now, and you'll say, we went through that all that happened in a week span. I mean, just kind of walk me through this past football season and your biggest takeaway and what you learned from that throughout that whole process.
Well, I think one thing the entire body learned, every school that's a member learned, is that there has to be unity. And the appeal process that each school had on the classification, I think the governing body realized we're literally in the process of shutting down our own organization from being able to function appropriately for our student athletes. So they actually at the Board of Control, they voted out their rule to be able to appeal classifications. They approved a new classification system. So I think that put everybody at ease that things will go smoother. And I look forward to that, and I think all the member schools look forward to that, because ultimately when a student athlete is preparing to play in a state football playoff, a state volleyball playoff, and the court system is determining when and where and we can play, it's not good. I don't think anybody wants that. So, moving forward, we're going to hope for better days as far as that's concerned, and I think we'll see that.
You mentioned the U word that I really liked is unity, and you're trying to find unity amongst your member schools, and I think a lot of communication has been dealt with and has been had over these last couple of months following what happened in December. when you try and find unity with so many member schools and so many people that have a voice in this say, how do you kind of find that common ground and try and really do find that unity through it all?
Well, it's not easy because what's misunderstood is that everybody and even every school is different. It's different in population. It's different in location, availability of resources. It's different in staffing. It may be different. Do you have a full-time athletic director, or do you have somebody that does it on the side, totally part-time? What is the role of your principal and how involved can they be? Because they have a lot of responsibility in today's education world. So all those factors mean that everybody sees things from their own perspective and has their own issues to deal with. Our job is to understand that and come up with a plan that best meets the needs of all, not just of one. And I think that's the problem with our rules. Our rules are really good, and they're vetted by the entire body. And yet we have individual parents, individual family members, even at times maybe individuals outside of that in other organizations that feel if one rule impacts them negatively, something needs done about it. That is not always the case. We have rules and regulations and guidelines for a reason, and they work. So sometimes when they negatively impact a certain person or individual or group, they feel like that is wrong. It's not necessarily wrong. It just didn't work best for you at the moment. And so you have to have schools understand and individuals understand at times as the rule applies. It may not be exactly, the way you wish it was. But if we don't have that structure and organization, we can't continue to have the product and the great events, the great tournaments with the competitive balance that we have.
Through that week back in December, it just seemed like when talking with people outside, whether it be a member school, a coach, administrator, some people were still confused as to how the governing body of the SSAC works. And I think that's still a question that you guys are still continuing to address as you guys are under new leadership. What would you tell people that may not completely understand or want to know what the SSAC is or who the SSAC is? What's your message to them to kind of allow them to understand better this governing body?
Absolutely. The SSAC is its member schools, and of course those schools are ran by the principal. And those principals get together once a year at what's called the Board of Control. And they present, debate, argue, and vote over rules, changing rules, making new rules. Our job as an office at the SSAC is to enforce those rules and to serve those schools. And that's what we do. But when there's an issue or a problem, obviously everybody has to have somebody to throw the dart at. And that dart gets thrown at the term, the SSAC. Well, the SSAC is every member school, and we appreciate our member schools, and our job is to serve them, and we're going to do that. We're also going to, as an office, put a great emphasis on education. Education about how our organization does work, like we just partly explained, and also education on what are the rules, because it seems like there is a lot of misinformation about specific rules, be it eligibility, be it transfer, whatever the area is. We want to do a better job of educating our school leadership, our athletes, our parents, and the general public about the rules of the SSAC. Again, rules put in by our entire Board of Control, made up of our principals that we enforce as an office.
The 4 classification system was introduced at the turn of this decade, and it's worked in boys and girls basketball, in my honest opinion, and I've been on the record saying that. But it was introduced to 5 new sports last year, with football being one of them. What was your biggest takeaway? I mean, did you leave this past season optimistic about the future of the 4 classes in those sports? And what did you kind of see working with those 4 classes in those sports? How did those kind of go hand in hand, and did that work?
I think with the sports that have increased to 4 classes so far, it's worked pretty well. We have to continue to monitor it because at the same time we increase to 4 classes, we're losing schools around our state, and we're losing student population in our member schools. So we're going to have to continue to evaluate that and make sure that that we do maintain a high level of performance in the 4 classes. So that's something we'll always have to look at.
When you talk about this upcoming football season, what's your excitement level leading into this being your first football season as the executive director of the SSAC?
Well, I'm going to have a lot less work to do in football than I've had in the past because I've been the director of football. So actually, I'm looking forward to football. You know, I'll be involved, and I'll be consult, and I'll be there, but I will not have to work near as hard, specifically for the sport of football. And I love the sport of football, so it's going to be, I hope, an enjoyable administrative experience.
When you talk about the legislative session this past year, one of the things that they brought up was trying to figure out who's governing the SSAC. Would it be a government entity? Is it still going to be a private organization? When you were looking at the logistics of how that would all work, where was your head at in just in regards to what they were trying to do following what happened back in December?
I think that goes back to very few people really understand the organization and its structure. We do not receive tax dollars. Our revenue is totally from postseason state championships. Even the regional money goes back to the schools, with the exception of the basketball regional co-finals and the football playoffs. So even our tournament revenue, if it's postseason, most of that still goes back to the schools. But our only revenue is from our state championships and our corporate sponsors. And our corporate sponsors are an absolute huge piece of our ability to operate and put on the events and run the events as well as we do. And we do a good job of that in West Virginia, trust me. People that visit our state tournaments from other states will tell you the West Virginia state tournaments are ran, and their venues and their execution is outstanding. But I worry about people not understanding that if you're a state entity, you can't operate under that same format. So you'd be playing state tournaments in local schools. You would not be able to provide the experience the same way we do for our student athletes right now. So I do have concerns of that.
When you go out of state and you're talking with these different state organizations that govern high school sports, what are you hearing from them in regards to what they're doing and trying, putting your own twist in it and making it something that we can implement here in West Virginia?
Well, first let me say that nationwide, many of the states share the same issues: transfer issues, eligibility issues, and involvement from outside entities that really don't need to be involved in education-based athletics. And so protecting the cause, the purpose, the culture, and the mission of education-based athletics is a big job for all the state associations right now, because there's just, it's a trickle-down effect from college and other organizations. Everybody thinks they want to be involved. They think there's a big piece of the pie they can get into. But if we're not careful, we're going to lose the mission of education-based athletics and the lifelong experiences, memories, and lessons that are learned.
You mentioned the transfer rule. I want you to kind of take it from two separate angles, because I know you've worn a lot of different hats in your many years of being a school administrator, both from the SSAC side and also being outside of the SSAC. But let's start with just being a coach and an administrator to start before we talk about you being an SSAC executive director. From a coach and an administrator's position and perspective, what is your perspective of this transfer rule that was implemented just a couple of years ago?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt it's created, the way I phrase it is, the haves have gotten more and the have-nots have suffered. And I think it's, when you can be a junior or senior and you could transfer, you're not transferring for academic reasons at that time. So we're losing the educational-based athletic concept there. We're transferring for sports. Okay, I don't think that's a positive. And I think our previous rule allowed you to choose the school you want to go to as a freshman. And if you happen to choose poorly, you still had the opportunity to go back to your school one time. I think that served us well for many years and wasn't really much of an issue. And unfortunately, some entities disagreed and changed the law. We've had to deal with it. And there's been a domino effect because it's impacted a whole lot of other rules. It's created some disharmony around our state amongst schools because obviously if you can transfer and be eligible, it's going to also open the door for recruitment, and that's a constant battle.
Yeah, so let's take it from that angle, from the SSAC side. You talked about the impact, the recruiting side of things, because it does happen in the state. How do you go about governing that then? I mean, as an organization, you probably get thousands upon thousands of emails and text messages on a weekly basis saying, this kid's going there, he should be here. it's a constant headache in a sense. How do you go about governing that on a day-to-day basis?
Well, we have the transfer law in place, so you are allowed a one-time transfer. So we deal with that. It's the recruiting element that's still not allowed that we have to continue to address, and it's hard to deal with because you get a lot of hearsay. You get a lot of people that want to tell you this is happening, but you get very little evidence. And I can just say that if we can get evidence, we are absolutely going to do everything we can to keep that under control.
When you look at this transfer rule, what would you want to see changed to it? I mean, obviously just talking about it, the full emotion is probably still a little bit mixed in a sense, but just talking about that, where is your head with that, and what would you want to see changed with that next legislative session?
Well, I think anytime you transfer when you're a junior and senior, that's not a good scenario. I think that's too late, to be making a school transfer. So I'd like to see the transfer maybe have restrictions on when it can apply. I think that would be helpful.
A couple more for you. And talking about the future of the SSAC, what leaves you optimistic about, maybe not even this year, but let's take it from a time frame of 5, 10, 15 years from now. With where we're at, I know you mentioned earlier, we're losing schools, we're losing student population as well, but just kind of give me your perspective with the state of the SSAC and the state of student education, student athletics in this state. Where's your head at in regards to that?
Well, I think one concern I have is the turnover. We have turnover in school administrators, so you have lack of consistency. You have turnovers in coaching. You have fewer and fewer coaches that are involved in the school system. So the process becomes constant. And so I think that's a challenge that we have. But at the same time, come to the state tournaments. Come to the events. It's still about the kids. It's still a great product and a great experience for these young people. And so I see no reason that we can't continue to fight the fight for education-based athletics and continue to make it a positive for all those involved.
You've been a member and an assistant director of the SSAC for a number of years. What allowed you just to remain in this organization and keep fighting for student athletics here in West Virginia?
Well, it's just a passion just for that. Education-based athletics, middle school, high school athletics, they are the other part of education. They are a big part of the education process for those students involved. And, I have benefited from that my entire life, enjoyed that my entire life, have great memories from that. And I want to make sure that the next young person has the same experiences that I was able to benefit from.
The communication and relationship side of things, talking about that, how much of an emphasis is that for you now as an executive director? I know you can talk all day with school administrators, but just the communication and relationships with coaches as well. How valuable is that when deciding certain things within the SSAC?
We listen a lot. I don't think people understand how much we do listen and try to make, informed decisions, because, we want to hear from our coaches, we want to hear from our administrators, we hear from our parents, and we want to hear from our athletes. And then you have to mesh that into what is best as a whole for that particular sport or that particular activity. So it's very important, and I think the office has for many years done a really good job of taking input. That doesn't mean that just because you provided everything gets to be your way. But we listen hard to our coaches committees. We talk with our administrators. We are very open to suggestions, and we're always looking, just like a good coach is always looking for ways to improve, we as an organization, we're always looking for ways that we can improve our activities and our athletics.
And then finally, what's the one thing or a couple of things that whenever you do talk to coaches, they would like to see changed or implemented in regards to high school athletics here in West Virginia?
I think that's the debate over contact of the coach. Right now we have the 32 flex day rule. Is that being abused? Is that working? Versus what we used to have in a 3-week period, versus do they want to be able to have contact year-round? I think that's an ongoing discussion that I'm very interested over the next year taking some input on and looking at some things. We're also have to be considerate of that the sports medicine committee And our sports medicine committee has expressed some concerns that some of these multi-sport athletes are not getting enough downtime and rest, and are being, becoming also literally almost a professional at the high school level. We have to be very careful about that they still are a young person and still can enjoy life outside their athletics, so they don't become burnt out on athletics. And if you play a sport and then you play that sport as a travel season, and then you train for that sport, really there comes a time where your injury levels by all data shows you are much more injury prone. And I think that is the athlete that we're seeing burnout on. So we want to keep kids involved, but we want to keep them rounded, and that goes back to the education-based athletics. It's all part of the developmental process in young people. It's not just about one sport and you being successful in one sport, and it's not just about what that one sport offers you as an opportunity. It's about all of the athletes and what benefits, memories, and life lessons can be learned throughout their experiences.
I'd like to have one more question. Talking with coaches from my perspective, some of them have expressed potentially starting earlier in certain sports, i.e. football. I know in Kentucky they started about a week or two earlier than what we do in West Virginia. Same thing goes with basketball. Have those conversations ever been brought up to the standpoint of, okay, maybe we do need to look a little bit more into this?
We've adjusted some sports in their seasons. It's always open for discussion through the coaches' committees, and all coaches have access to that to express that. Football season starts soon enough, especially with the way the flex days are being used right now. We've got enough football being played right now, I can guarantee you that. And a lot more than used to be played in this state. So be that for the good or the bad, I don't think we want to start football season any earlier. We're always, climate's always an issue in West Virginia in sports seasons. So the question really on the other end is, should spring sports go a little later in the year, even after the school year's ended, so the weather's a little better, fits softball and baseball better, something to look at. So a lot of factors always, a lot of things we consider. Again, we're always open to consider anything that we think in the end makes the process better.
Well, Wayne, we appreciate your time here, and obviously good luck in your first year as the executive director for the 25-26 athletic calendar year. So good luck to you and your staff.
Well, Taylor, thank you very much. I appreciate you. Really do.
Absolutely. That's new executive director of the WVSSAC, Mr. Wayne Ryan. Be sure to go on our website, wvgazettemail.com, for all the latest high school prep news across the Kanawha Valley and the tri-state area. Also follow us on Twitter at GazMail Sports. That's G-A-Z Mail Sports. Be sure to follow us on Facebook at HD Media Sports.